We have just exited the 2010s, which was an incredible year for cinema. However, in those 10 years, there were countless movies that never actually hit their intended release dates during that time, whether it be due to cancellations, scheduling conflicts, or actors/directors backing out. They've all been delayed in some way or another. So today on Top 10 Beyond the Screen, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 10 movies that were supposed to come out last decade. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. And with that, let's jump in. Coming in at 10, Gambit. Now the Gambit movie was set to begin simply because of Channing Tatum, kind of anyway. It all began when he was lined up to play a character in X-Men Origins Wolverine, remember the one. But he was forced to pass due to contractual obligations with G.I. Joe: The Rise of the Cobra. However, Fox were very into the idea of Tatum playing a character, and along came Gambit. Tatum was supposed to be introduced in X-Men Apocalypse, with the standalone movie even getting a release date of October 7th, 2016. However, the huge commitment of the role almost made Tatum drop out of the role altogether. However, he stayed. But like our entire list, directors came and went, with the release date getting bumped numerous times. It was then determined that Gambit needed a rewrite. Jumped to 2017 after a new rewrite. A new director joined and the movie was given a brand new release date of February 14th, 2019. And shooting was supposed to begin in March 2018. However, once again the director backed out. Since then, nothing has looked good for the movie, and I highly doubt we will be seeing it anytime soon on the big screen. Coming in at 9, No Time to Die, Bond 25. Bond movies are usually being pumped out left, right and centre. However, it is hard to believe that the last time we saw James Bond on our screens was back in 2015, just 3 years after the release of Skyfall. Yet, here we are still waiting for Bond 25, which is set to be released this year, we hope. The development for the movie kicked off in 2016, although it didn't land its first director until February 2018, that being Danny Boyle, with a slated release of November 8th, 2019. However, production was set to begin in December of 2018, but Boyle left the project just months before the start date. In September 2018, the movie found a new director, with Fleabag's Phoebe Waller-Bridge stepping in to do rewrites of the script before the movie began filming on December 3rd, 2018, and wrapped on October 26th. As of right now, No Time to Die is set to be released in April of this year. But we will see about that. Also, no one's excited. Can't name a person. Coming in at 8, The Division. The first of a few video game adaptations on our list, The Division was yet another video game that was set to be turned into a movie in 2010. Thanks to box office failures like Tomb Raider and Assassin's Creed, it didn't happen. News of the movie came first in 2016, with Jake Gyllenhaal and Jessica Chastain attached to the project. However, by 2017 the director left and was replaced by David Leitch. Since then, we haven't heard much else other than Netflix swooping in to buy the distribution rights. Though, saying that, it still doesn't have a release date. Not too sad about it. Coming in at 7, The Grudge. Back in 2011, a fourth Grudge movie was announced, with the intention of it being a reboot of the popular horror series following the train wreck that was The Grudge 3. The initial plan was for the movie to come out in 2013 or 2014, however, the screenwriter for the movie wasn't hired until March 2014, so I don't know what they were thinking there. Then in July 2017, director Nicolas Pesce was hired and he went on to rewrite the original script. However, just like the rest of our list, the movie was pushed back in 2019 with a release date set for 2020. Coming in at 6, Disenchanted, Enchanted II. Back in 2007, Enchanted was released, which starred Amy Adams, Patrick Dempsey, James Marsden, and Idina Menzel, and was essentially an homage to the classic Disney princess movies. However, since the beginning of the decade, there have been talks of a sequel, with it being announced by Variety back in February 2010. Following the announcement, Anne Fletcher was set to direct the movie with hopes that it would hit theaters in 2011. But, of course, that didn't happen. So, for the past 10 years, all that has occurred is talk and more talk. And in 2016, Adam Shankman was in negotiations to direct, however, don't hold your breath, because the last that was announced was back in May 2019 when we found out the movie still wasn't greenlit. Sucks to suck. Coming in at 5, At the Mountains of Madness. Ever since 2006, Guillermo del Toro has been working on an adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness. However, according to the director himself, we had Prometheus to blame for the movie never getting released. When del Toro initially wrote it alongside Matthew Robbins, they couldn't seem to get the movie funded. However, in 2010, James Cameron signed on to produce the movie, with Tom Cruise set to star and production to begin in 2011. However, Universal refused to greenlight the movie if it was rated R, which was what del Toro wanted. And then, like I previously mentioned, del Toro felt as though his version of At the Mountains of Madness was a little too similar to the alien movie Prometheus, in turn giving the film a very, very long pause. I'm not too sad about it though. You can't adapt H.P. Lovecraft. Coming in at 4, The Last of Us. Another video game adaptation on our list, Naughty Dog's 2013 hit The Last of Us was all set to be turned into a movie just 1 year after the release of the game. It was intended to be written by Naughty Dog's Neil Druckmann and produced by Sam Raimi, with Maisie Williams set to play the character of Ellie. I mean, I would have preferred Ellen Page, but we don't always get what we want, do we? However, by 2016 the movie entered development hell and still remains there to this day, and with the upcoming release of The Last of Us Part 2 on May 29th, 2020, I don't see the movie happening anytime soon or at all. Coming in at 3, Uncharted. Now this was a movie that never needed to be made, in my opinion anyway. Technically speaking, the movie has been on hold for over a decade, with producer Avi Arad announcing it back in 2009. However, the movie has been stalled ever since, with numerous directors and actors coming and going. From directors like David O. Russell to Neil Berger to Seth Gordon to Dan Trachtenberg. More recently, Tom Holland was tapped to play a young Nathan Drake, which to me is a terrible casting decision. However, it seems like Mark Wahlberg's name is being thrown around now as well. As of June, the Uncharted movie is set to be released on December 18th, 2020, but considering nothing has even been filmed yet, I highly doubt that is going to happen. Dream big, but dream smart. Coming in at 2, New Mutants. At this point, New Mutants is the butt of a lot, and I mean a lot of jokes, because unlike the majority of our list, this film actually got made. It just hasn't been released. Instead, it's been pushed back several times. Like previous movies including Logan and Deadpool, New Mutants was yet another take on the X-Men world, which is owned by Fox. The movie stars Anya Taylor-Joy and Maisie Williams, and it was filmed back in 2017. A trailer even dropped that same year in preparation for its scheduled April 13th, 2018 release date. However, the movie just didn't come out. First of all, it was delayed to avoid competing with Deadpool 2, and then delayed again to avoid the same thing with Dark Phoenix. During this time, extensive reshoots occurred, and while this was happening, Disney was in the process of acquiring Fox. Currently, The New Mutants is set to come out in theaters on April 3rd, 2020, but I am not holding my breath. At this point, I don't even want to watch it. Maisie Williams can't act, she can only act in Game of Thrones, and we all need to learn that pretty damn quick. And finally, coming in at number 1, Inhumans. In 2011, Marvel Studios began developing a film adaptations of the Inhumans. Inhumans are a fictional group of superheroes who appear in comic books published by Marvel Comics. In October 2014, Kevin Feige announced Inhumans as part of its massive Phase 3 announcement, with it set to be the second to last movie in Phase 3 with a release date of November 2nd, 2018. However, as we know, that didn't happen. At the time of the announcement, Joe Robert Cole was set to write the script, and Vin Diesel was going to appear as Black Bolt, which is huge. You know how much I love Vin. However, following the deal struck between Sony and Marvel over Spider-Man, Inhumans got bumped to July 12, 2019. However, things took another turn when the writer left the movie, resulting in Marvel taking Inhumans off its 2019 release calendar. Instead, Marvel decided to make it into a TV series in a first-of-its-kind deal where IMAX would co-produce. However, sadly, it was awful. Worst of the worst. Never watch it. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Were there any movies that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do part 2. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos, Top 10 Biggest Celebrities Who Are Broke Part 2. Helen Fenner said, haha, my dad also threw Sweeney Todd in the bin, only DVD he ever did that with. Was it a DVD or was it a Blu-ray like mine? I got that Blu-ray and then I threw the Blu-ray in the bin because it was the worst thing I've ever seen. Can't believe that got made. Can't believe Johnny Depp won an award for that film. Miss KD Talbot said, can I add myself to this list? I mean, I'm right there with you, so let's be added together. Al Machado said, hey there Lucy, wow, you were a tough one today. I knew most of them, but still a cool video. I'm a tough one most days. Al, you need to get with the times. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another Beyond the Screen vid. And until next time, see you later. However, thanks to box office failures like Tom Raider. Then in July 2017, you can't not. Excuse you. Don't you think that was good advice?
I think so.
Dream big, but dream smart. Remember those words. Whoa, whoa, ghost. It's Maisie Williams. She's coming for me.